Hey guys, today we are gonna be talking and discussing about the seventh lesson in Sri Lankan history textbook, which is Decline of Ancient Cities in the Dry Zone and Origin of New Kingdoms in Southwest. So this lesson is in grade 10 history book. So the first subtopic is background of the urban life. So when we talk about the background of the urban life, it is mainly in agriculture, hunting, and animal husbandry. So these things, agriculture, hunting, and animal husbandry, are done mainly in Anuradhapura, which is the main city in Sri Lanka. So there are two major signs that were based on when creating these farming things. So the first one was agricultural land, and they also considered the skills people give towards agriculture. So when doing an cultivation, so when doing a cultivation, the main thing the people considered was the agricultural land and also the skills of the people towards the agriculture. So these were the two main things that were considered when they were engaging in cultivation. So the people who got a rich harvest were left with remaining grains. So some rich people in earlier days had remaining grains. So these remaining grains were collected at the end of one whole year. And so these remaining grains are known as akivit. So it's akivit. It's called surplus. In Sinhala it's atirikaya, but in English it's surplus. So the surplus owners were meant to be rich and luxurious. So these people were rich and luxurious. So these luxurious people were the owners of surplus. So in a Jataka Katha, there is a story of a person who was in need of grains, was lucky to have a surplus owner who had helped him with his remaining grains. So it is a story where one person who was poor had no grains left to eat, so the rich surplus owner, I'll draw a crown to represent rich. The rich surplus owner gave some grains to this poor man. So it is like helping. So that's what these surplus owners do. They distribute the remaining grains to the poor after end of each year. So that's the whole story. So it is mentioned in a Jataka Katha, which is known as story in English. Now it's time to talk about Urbanization 1. By 405th BC, people were fully urbanized and were engaged in external trading. There were external trading in Sri Lanka. So if there are external trading, that means there are internal trading too. The people were fully urbanized and were engaged in external trading, which affected the economy of Sri Lanka. Foresighted king. Foresighted means far-sighted. So our kings were far-sighted, and thus they worked really hard in order to develop the country at that time. So these far-sighted kings built ports in eastern coasts by knowing the fact that it would improve Sri Lanka's economy, and also they were fully in charge of the security of Sri Lanka. So they chose cities which were near the coastal areas to rule Sri Lanka, as it was easy for them to control the ports. So, for example, if we draw a sketch of Sri Lanka like this, so this is not the perfect image of the country, but this is like a sketch, a rough sketch of Sri Lanka. So, the ancient kings took the coastal areas to rule the country. So these, the area which I am coloring right now, shading right now, are the coastal areas where kings started ruling the country, as it was easy for them to control and manage the trading system, because in coastal areas there were ports. So let's just name some ports. So the first port you'll find like around here, like in Jaffna area, you'll see Dambakolapatuna, also known as Jambakolapatuna, and there is Marthota and Trincomalee Harbour. Likewise, there are some harbours or ports which were used in ancient time. So this was the reason. The reason was like the ruling of these coastal areas was the reason that why King Vijayabahuwan had chose Polonnaruwa as his ruling center, and King Parakramabahu the first was Southeastern Asian trade relations. Okay, King Vijayabahuwan had married Asian princes, and after that several kings married princesses from Asian countries such as South India, Burma, Cambodia, and etc. Now this thing is like this. King Parakrambahu I ruled South Asian, did not rule, but he was engaged in Southeastern Asian trade relations. So these are some external things happened apart from Sri Lanka. Like Sri Lanka was engaged in other countries. So yeah. So King Parakrambahu the first had Southeastern Asian trade relations, and also King Vijayabahu I had married the Asian princess, and also his sister married a Pandyan prince. Okay, so I'll tell it again. King Vijayabahu I married a Kalinga princess, and King Vijayabahu's sister, Princess Mita, married a Pandyan prince. So that's the whole thing, which explains about that Sri Lanka was engaged in other countries as well. So there were architectural creations such as Buddha statues in Galvihara and Polonnaruwa Satmahal Prasada are good examples for ancient creativity and talent. So Buddha statues in Galvihara and also Polonnaruwa Satmahal Prasada are good examples which shows the ancient creativity and talent. So when forming a city, they considered some places, some special places that should be included in every city. So there were a tank, buildings for religious activities, market settlements, aesthetic parks for a better developed city. So a tank, religious buildings, and also aesthetic parks And this is a fun fact. Anuradhapura had been the capital for over 1,400 years, as it was full sufficient with food, animal products, and it was produced by villagers. So the animal products were produced by villagers, even the food. So that's why there was sufficiency. So that's why Anuradhapura had been the capital for over 1,400 years. So, and also there were industrial activities such as iron industry, irrigation industry, etc. Mainly in Anuradhapura. Yeah. So now let's talk about the kingdoms. So the last king to rule the Anuradhapura kingdom was King Mahinda the Fifth. Mahinda the Fifth. And so the Chola invasions happened during this time. So King Vijayabahu I liberated the country from the Cholas, and then he united the country by making Polonnaruwa as his capital. So here Anuradhapura and then Polonnaruwa was King Vijayabahu I's ruling area. So, but after some time period, Polonnaruwa was also ruined. So now we can say Anuradhapura is cancelled and also Polonnaruwa. So the reason for Polonnaruwa to be declined were the first one was weak rulers came to power. So first one, weak rulers came to power. And the second one was that the power struggle between Pandya and Kalinga. So there's a story behind this. So Vijayabahu I was the king who had relationships with Pandyan clans and Kalinga clans. So as I said earlier, King Vijayabahu married a Kalinga princess and the sister married a Pandyan prince. So thus this king had relationships with Kalinga and Pandyan both. So after this king died, after this King Vijayabahu died, uh, Kalinga and Pandyan were left in Sri Lanka. So these clans came from India, and these clans were left with no ruler. So after the death of King Vijayabahu I, these two clans started to fight for the power. So there was a power struggle between these two clans. So that was the second reason. So power struggle between Kalinga and Pandyan clans. So the second one was economic deterioration. So since Greek rulers came to power after the death of King Nishankamalla, so after the death of King Nishankamalla, Greek rulers came to power, and thus as they could not build a political stability, it seems that the tanks and all the anicuts and all were not maintained properly. So there were a there was a political disorder at that time. So because of this, the city, the provincial ruling, too may have been paralyzed. So the decline in agriculture and trade also happened. So these all factors led to the economic paralysis. So the fourth, last but not the least, was invasion of Maga. So Mag invaded this country with a huge army in 1215. So there's a part in Mahavamsa which describes the destruction caused by the invasion of Maga, also known as Kalinga Maga. People were tied, tortured, and made them beggars by looting their wealth. Statues were broken down, temples were robbed, devotees were attacked, children were beaten by the invaders. So, this was the destruction caused by Maga. So, there was no security for the lives and the properties of the rajarata people, and the result was that the oppressed monks and the people migrated to Ruhuna, Malayarata, which is upcountry, and Mayarata for protection. And also the religious places such as Ranvalisaya, Abhayagiriya, and Jetavanaramaya, which were worshipped daily, were gradually went into wildness. So many populated cities in Anuradhapura became ruins. So these are the effects of the invasion of Kalinga Maga, and also the reasons for the decline of ancient cities were invasions of the enemies, downfall of the central ruling, lack of security, paralysis of the trade and transport affairs, migration of people to other countries. So these are the reasons for the decline of the ancient cities. Invasions of the enemies, downfall of central ruling, lack of security, paralysis of trading and transport affairs, migration of people to other areas. So these are the five reasons for the decline of ancient cities. Okay, guys, that's it for today, and hope you guys learned something new. And also, let's meet in part 2.